Hello and welcome to episode 31 of Film Stop. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year. I know we last time we were here, we were talking about some of our favorites from 2021. And we'd also mentioned our guests who had joined us through all of their technical difficulties and problems and helped us produce some of our favorite episodes from last year. We have some returning guests. As always, we have Bo. Hey, Bo.
Hello.
We have Pat. Hey, Pat.
Hello, Siraj.
And we have Gina, who's on here for the second time. Gina, you were loved by so many the first time that we had to bring you back. Hey.
Aw, that's so good to hear. Hello again.
How are you guys doing? How's the new year turning out so far? 3 weeks into it.
So I heard this phrase the other week that we're in the junior year of COVID now. So, other than that, I guess it's all right.
So the 2022 thing was like 2020 2.0.
Yeah, 2020 again, 2020 also. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, it kind of just feels like it's happening. We're here.
Wait, the movie it's happening?
No. Just like the year is happening.
Okay.
And we're 10 years past the end of the Mayan calendar, so we all know what that means.
What does that mean? I don't know.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay.
I was trying to do a little, like slasher movie where
that's more of a disaster movie. That's like Roland Emmerich space.
Well, I meant like what's going to happen.
That doesn't follow Siraj's definition, Pat. Excluded.
I know, true. Refrigerator doors must be opened.
Well, speaking of definitions, let me just introduce the episode itself. So we're going to go over Scream 5. Because Pat and I decided it was a good decision to go watch it in the theaters. And then, so after we review it, which is going to be spoiler free, we're not going to go into any discussion because there isn't much to discuss there. After we do that, we're going to talk about our favorite slashers. And because slasher can be a debatable topic, we've restricted it, and that's where the definition comes into play. And I know Gina mentioned it, but basically I've been trying to get Pat and Bo and Gina to pick within that definition. We're going to pick our top 5 slasher movies and explain why. I think Bo might not have all 5 in there because he's a snob, Uncle Bob. Okay, we're going to start with defining a slasher movie. So what is a slasher movie? The way we look at it is the movie has to have like 4 elements specifically. First one is that it has to be about body count and who dies next. So there's people dying and it's more than one person. So it's not like a home invasion movie, which, many of us love. But this one would not include that. It also cannot be a supernatural or sci-fi. So this is where we're being very genre specific. That it can't be an alien. It can't be supernatural like a ghost or whatever else. And lastly, it has to be the main antagonist or the threat has to be at least somewhat human. So it can't be a disaster movie like I mentioned, Happening, or any other Roland Emmerich movie. It has to be a human threat. It can't be an alien either, so you can't have a predator show up. So it's a very narrow space, and of course you can think of a few like Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare series, but that's the series that we're trying to get into. And some will argue about some of those villains being semi-human, but that's okay. Those are the limits. Any questions, Pat, Bo, Gina?
Are we only counting a slasher if there are knives involved?
Ooh, that's a good question. I guess not, because it could be like you could bring up Chainsaw Massacre where there's no knives, or like Crazies where there's like pitchforks.
Yeah, I think as you're defining it, I'm literally like crossing off things from my list that I can't talk about now.
Okay,
especially the home invasion part. That's the one. I feel like a lot of slasher movies are home invasions.
That and the supernatural one, because some of them like end as like a cop out where they like are suddenly
Yeah.
supernatural.
Well, yeah. I mean, the question is like where to draw the line on supernatural because getting shot and not dying or whatever. It's like, well, is
Oh,
that maybe
yeah, I call that like semi-human threat. But if there is a human foundation to that threat, then that's included. And I'll say this, like even though we're defining it, if you do feel very strongly about the movie that you want to talk about, then go for it. Bring it in and make a case for it. I don't think that there's anyone judging what we're talking about except for my dad, which, hey, Dad, thank you for listening as always. But yeah, that's about it. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, Gina.
Perfect, because I love horror. So I have
Yeah.
like already 15 movies now.
Uh, cool. Well, I'm excited, and before we get all the way there, and actually even into our review, guys, please like, share, subscribe this podcast wherever you're getting it. We're on Twitter, Filmstop3, because it's the place to be. I'm gonna say this over and over again. And of course, you can find us on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on everything, iTunes and Google Play and all of those things. So please, and if you have any comments, you know where to find Bo. We'll get into that email ID later. All right, Pat. Let's start talking about Scream 5. Before I guess you can start reviewing it, I'm gonna give a very high level synopsis. So of course, the fifth of the Scream franchise. Oh, and I should clarify, Bo and Gina have not watched the movie, so this is going to be entirely Pat and me reviewing it from a standpoint of actually having watched the movie, and Gina and Bo giving us their 2 cents about it.
Yep, I was
Anyways,
gonna say still commenting.
yep, which is perfect. All right. So, fifth of the Scream franchise. Just to remind you, Scream was originally made in 1996, I think, or somewhere there, by Wes Craven. A landmark movie for the genre, slasher specifically. And all the way back, it was Nev Campbell and Courtney Cox and David Arquette who were sort of the leads in the movie. And of course, they are back in this one, and they show up at some point when we will not spoil for you. But this one specifically is 25 years after the streak of brutal murders that shocked the quiet town of Woodsboro, California. A new killer dons the Ghostface mask and begins targeting a group of teenagers to resurrect secrets from the town's deadly past. And Ghostface Killer is the way they refer to the bad guy. And Bo told me yesterday that there is also a rapper named Ghostface Killer. This none of this reference.
yes, but part of the Wu-Tang Clan who had the name way before the Scream movie came out. So I don't know. I'm just saying.
Did you guys know that, Pat, Gina, or am I just like catching up to American pop culture 11 years?
Yeah, Bo had to tell you that,
Yep.
Siraj. All right.
I had no idea.
Yes. Yes. Thank you,
Disappointed
Pat.
in both of you.
But also,
Yeah,
I
that's true.
don't think we could deny that the mask in Scream looks like a ghost face. So what else would you call him?
Exactly. But also, the point is, like, we didn't know about the rapper or rap artist. You guys can't really say anything because you're going to review a movie that you haven't watched. So, there. All right, Pat, tell us, what do you think about the movie?
I mean, I was entertained. I would say that. Granted, I really wanted to see the movie thanks to, I don't know, can we mention other companies on this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks to T-Mobile Tuesdays, I was able to get a movie ticket for $4 to see this thing. And as soon as I saw that offer on Tuesday, I was like, yo, Siraj, want to go see Scream?
I also said yeah, not knowing the consequences. So we'll find out at some point. But yay,
Sweet.
go T-Mobile.
T-Mobile, if you want to sponsor, hit up Siraj, Film Stop 3 on Twitter. But a decent horror film, decent slasher film. I mean, no real qualms or anything like that. It was short enough. It wasn't one of those like Marvel movies where it goes on for 2 or 3 hours. It got straight to the point. Weren't really too many lulls, but was, I don't know. Did you feel differently? You think that there were some lulls?
No, I mean, it felt like a good movie to watch with enough alcohol in you. But sorry, continue. I didn't mean to disrupt you.
Yeah, the another sponsor, Black Box. Is that what it's called?
Black Box.
Is that what the wine is called?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Box wine, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, Black Box Wine. If you want to sponsor Film Stop as well, Film Stop 3 on Twitter. Great movie to watch with some Black Box in your pocket.
Yeah, I think.
And also a word from our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh God. Okay, we'll just see what happens. I don't think any of these people, I mean, marketing team people from these companies, listen to this podcast, so we should be fine. I hope. So I thought that like I said earlier, the movie was fine. It was fun to watch with enough alcohol in me. I didn't expect much more from it, and you can see the twist coming. I think I called it out to Pat like right the first scene where the killer shows up, or I guess in the normal face shows up.
Yeah,
and
you
Pat,
did, and I was very angry.
Yes, you were very angry, and you promised to punch me.
I wanted to prove you wrong, but
well,
I couldn't.
I'm not gonna spoil it for anyone, but it was I was mostly right. Let's say that. But besides all of that, I think it's nice to see Courtney Cox and David Arquette on screen together, and to some extent Neve Campbell. I've never been a huge fan of hers. I think she's pretty stone-faced in her performances, in whatever she's done. And I think like the thing that I would say was missing from the movie was better comedy. I thought that it was funny in parts, but that's about it. And I expect that from Scream. In fact, I kind of go in for the comedy. So yeah, it was fine. It's not anything else than just the 5th edition of the same thing told again and again.
I did feel like they leaned into that meta a lot more than they had in the previous versions.
Yes.
I mean, granted, that's what this franchise is known for.
Yeah.
But this one in particular, I feel like really not only leaned into the meta, but it leaned into like previous versions of their leaning into the meta, if that makes sense.
Yes, that, and then also it was heavily like referencing The Last Jedi, which
yeah, that really upset you.
Yeah,
or at least cracked you up.
It cracked me up because, Bo, you'll get a kick out of this. So they actually reference Rian Johnson in the movie as the guy who made Knives Out, directed the. So for anyone who hasn't seen Screams in a while, let me just remind you: the first Scream is about whatever happens in the town, and then the second one is about whatever happens with Neve Campbell's character as she goes to college. And at the same time, there's a book that is released by, I believe, by Courtney Cox's character. The third one, they make a movie on that book. And in the movie, or while making the movie, there's a bunch of murders. And then the fourth one goes back to the town where you find out that Neve Campbell's cousin is acting like Ghostface is back and killing a bunch of people when it turns out it's her and she's just looking for attention. I don't know. And then this fifth one references movies that have been made on those books. So I think they call them Stab, I think. And in that, they're talking about they reference the latest Stab movie, which is a completely like it's nothing what the fans expected. It was completely out of whack from the I guess the mythology of Stab and everything, and it pissed off all the fans. And they referenced that the director who made the new Stab movie was the guy who made Knives Out, and they really leaned into that. And I can't say that without say more without spoiling it, because it actually is a very heavy part of the movie as to like why that Stab 5 movie existed and sucked. So I
That's
think
actually that's pretty funny. I mean,
But-
yeah. I mean, go figure. Like subverting expectations in of itself doesn't actually create art. Go figure. Huh.
But they weren't saying Stab 5, it was Stab 9. It was a
Stab 9.
direct correlation to the Star Wars films.
Yeah. You're right. Stab 9. It wasn't Stab 5. That was another reason why it was like another just straight up hit at Last Jedi.
I mean, you're making me want to watch it. That sounds funny.
You should. I think you would, more than anyone else on this podcast, enjoy it, knowing that your love for horror movies and slashers.
You're probably right. Horror, especially horror comedies, are just so
Oh,
great.
that's my favorite too. We'll get
yeah.
into our list.
There are actually in India right now, slight tangent, but there's like a boom of like horror comedies, and most of them are trash, but there are one or two that are really good. Gina, I don't know if you watch any like Bollywood movies, but if you do, I'd recommend you a couple.
Yeah, no, tell me. Nobody in my family likes horror except me, so I can never get anyone to watch it.
We should probably do a I don't know, what's the next horror movie that's coming out? I don't even know.
There's one that's coming out. I think it's called X.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we should all go watch that one together. The trailers look good.
Yeah, I did want to see that one. I would be down.
Yeah. All right, let's figure something out. Anyways, we're while we make our plans on the side, let's get back to Scream 5. Gina and Bo, I guess, what do you guys have to add to what we've said?
I honestly had not heard anything of it, so the fact that there was a lot of return characters makes it interesting. I also am curious if they have like surprise return characters, which would be fun. I think it sounds. I guess I don't remember the plots of 2, 3, and 4 as well, but I kind of like how they just continue to be more and more meta and like just poke fun at themselves, because that is just so very Scream.
I was gonna say that like I'm pretty sure I've seen at least bits and pieces of 2 or 3, maybe 4, probably not 4, but I don't remember any of them except 1, to be perfectly honest. So
And I actually remember 1 because I remember Scary Movie and its portrayal or spoof of 1. So I remember it because of that. I don't even remember 1 that well, per se.
No, did you guys end up watching Fear Street at all on Netflix last year?
I watched the first one, and I haven't watched the second and the third. I think the older ones, or no, the newer ones. I don't remember what the time.
They went older, as like the first one was 94, then 78, and then 1666.
Yeah,
Okay,
I have it on the queue. I never got into it though.
You should finish watching it. But the first one is like such a call out to Scream. So it made me want to watch it again.
Did you read the R.L. Stein books that go along with it?
You know, I did not grow up reading the Fear Street series. I read the read Goosebumps and everything, but I never read Fear Street.
Did you guys read Animorph? Was it Animorphs? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yes. It's not. That has nothing to do with Scream.
I know, but I'm just curious because R.L. Stein came up.
Yeah, but he didn't do Animorphs.
He did not.
Oh well, okay.
I remember all the rich kids would always buy Animorphs at our book fair that we would have every semester or whatever.
The Scholastic Book Fair.
Yeah, Scholastic Book Fair. Oh, that's interesting. It happened in India too.
The Scholastic Book Fair was in India?
Yeah,
that's
really?
actually surprising.
Yeah. I think it happened every 6 months. They would come and they would like set their shop in the basement, and like they would do like an entire fair for books and things like that. And you're right, Pat. All the rich kids would go in with like their bag and get a bunch of shit, and then
then they wouldn't even like know. They would have like a blank check.
yeah, and I remember like just going through the different shelves and just like flipping through pages for Animorphs just to see the different like Animorphing figures or characters or whatever, and then
Yeah, you
moving
just go
on.
through it to look at the front cover.
Yeah, pretty much. And then I would ask for people to like borrow.
Well, I bet Animorphs didn't think they'd be getting a shout out on our Scream 5 podcast.
Yeah, I was about
Yeah,
to say, is this getting edited out or
We're
what?
going so far away.
Animorphs Film Stop 3 on Twitter. If you were looking for some sponsors.
I don't even think that like I don't know if Animorphs will ever get resurrected as a IP for film or TV. More TV, I guess. But yeah, I've never heard of anything being made on it. And I'm sure if I Wikipedia, it'll at least
Oh, there was. It
Yeah,
was
it was a
on.
Nickelodeon or something.
It was on Nickelodeon, and it was bad. Like
seriously.
bad.
Okay, I had no idea about that. All right, getting back to Scream 5. Pat, what's your final say? Like, do you think someone should watch it in the theaters right now, or wait for it on video on demand and watch it then, or free or whatever? Watch it on a lazy day, or just watch it never?
Yeah, so this will kind of lead into our top 5 for slasher movies. I mean, I have a hard time arguing to go to the theater to see a movie like this. It doesn't really need the theater experience.
Yeah.
I would argue no real even horror or slasher movie really needs that theater experience. So whether or not you're someone who definitely in a group, I think that horror and slasher movies are definitely fun in a group. So if you're good having 5 to 10 people over at your house, you don't. I wouldn't go to the theater though for this guy and pay full price. Like I mentioned before, I got it for $4. That was really the only reason why I would have seen Scream in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said, but I don't agree with the fact that horror movies in theaters is not needed. Like I think a good horror movie in the theaters is actually a great experience. I can think of a couple that I've had which made those movies like really strong for me. But yeah, I agree with the idea that you don't need to go to the theaters while there's a new variant out there to watch Scream 5. I know it sounds really odd that we did. But
There was no one else there.
yeah, exactly. And everyone needs to be vaccinated in Chicago to do things. So we were in there with a bunch of vaccinated people. So hopefully that helped at all, like a little bit. Besides that, I don't think you need to go into theaters, like I said, and you can also just wait on to watch it on a lazy day when you're looking for something to just watch, and it's free on Netflix or Hulu or what have you. Except if you're Gina. If you're Gina and you love slasher movies or the Scream franchise or just horror movies, then I think your partner, your group of friends, or what have you, just sit and watch it. It's not bad. It's actually fairly entertaining. Yeah, and it's a good continuation. I have not watched the sequel to the Halloween reboot, or I guess sequel. But I would say that if I were to compare it with the Halloween movie that came out 2-3 years ago, I think it's better in that it doesn't take itself so seriously. Requel, yes, that's the word. Wait, wasn't that in Scream?
Yeah, man.
Right. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, that's a meta joke.
Yeah, Jesus.
When you watch Scream 5, if you ever get to it, you'll know what we mean by requel. That's about it on Scream 5, guys. Do you have any parting thoughts on that before we move on?
Parting thoughts on the 5 minutes of Scream 5 and the 20-minute conversation on Animorphs? No, I'm good.
Hey, that was a great
Do you think there'll be a Scream 6, Siraj?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if it goes to like straight to DVD or like for streaming or whatever, they're definitely going to make another.
You think? Wait, was Wes Craven part of this one?
No.
No. Oh no. This is entirely
This is just on their own.
This is just the studio like reproducing the franchise.
Unless he gets like royalties or something.
I'm sure he gets royalties. I hope he does. Yeah.
Wow, the soundtrack has 24 tracks on it.
Really?
Ooh, guys, executive producer Harvey Weinstein. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, Scream 5 is canceled.
We take it back. Don't watch it ever. Do not watch it.
It's actually kind of impressive. I mean, like, how did he executive producer from jail?
I don't think he needs to do anything. Because he may have been involved in the original franchise. I think just by the fact that it's the same franchise, his name gets involved through the production companies. So if they own IP and the new studio's making it, then they got to pay royalties and bring up the credits, depending on what the contract is. So yeah, that's probably why. I don't think he's actually working. All right, I'm gonna move on, and we're gonna start talking about our top 5 favorites, slasher favorites. But before we do that, a quick break. We'll be right back, guys. Welcome back, guys. We were discussing Animorphs with a little bit of Scream, and now we're gonna talk about our favorite slasher movies. We're gonna kind of revisit the definition real quick in case you've forgotten or decided to skip that entire first half. We're going to talk about slasher movies that cover these 4 points. It basically involves a body count, who dies next, yada, yada, yada. It's not supernatural. It's not sci-fi. And the threat or the bad guy or woman or whatever, the villain, is at least somewhat human in nature. I know a few of us have other picks in there too that we want to kind of make a case for, but the way we'll try to do this is that we'll go round robin. Gina is going to go first with her 5th, and then Bo, and then Pat, and then me, and then we're going to do 4. But yeah, let's get started. Gina, what's the 5th favorite slasher movie in your list?
Yeah, I know. I just, as you were talking, I was like, oh, I guess this does not count. So I think, okay, I have a couple that I think are probably going to get excluded, but I think number 5 is House of Wax, which is a classic. The one I'm talking about is actually the remake, and it is, I think it's like 05. So it's not a great remake, but it is just one of the ones I used to watch so much in high school. And I just really liked it. I liked that concept of it, which is just, there's not a whole lot of plot, just the gore, and it was great.
Just to make sure, you are talking about the Paris Hilton version.
The Paris Hilton one. Hey, watching Paris Hilton die a terrible death is a great movie.
That is true.
That is actually the only thing I remember about that movie is like listening to Q101 on the radio, and they were doing a countdown to when Paris Hilton will die in House of Wax, and it was just based on the release date of that movie.
It was just, okay, I think I watched it. Yes, I did watch it because Chad Michael Murray and Jared Padalecki were in it.
Wait, are you a Supernatural fan?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And so it came out at the right time. It was great. I feel like that was also when like there hadn't been a lot of slashers for a while, and it kind of was coming back.
So the movie, actually, from what I know, it's actually, besides the name, and I think besides the name, it actually has nothing in connection to the original 1953. So that's probably why it sucked. It's because it didn't have anything in connection to the original, which is pretty good. But I also have names in my list that are purely nostalgic in some sense. So I get it.
Yeah, like I don't think it's a great movie. I have seen it like more than 5 times, though.
That's a lot of time for House of Wax.
It is a lot, isn't it? Anyway, that's my number 5.
All right, Bo, you next.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on this one because I have like 3. So here's the thing. I think I actually remember 3 movies that would fall in the way we've defined slasher movies. And so those are going to be my top three. And the rest of them I've probably watched, but I don't remember any of them, which means that, like, probably not my favorite.
All right. Are there any outer edges, like movies on the outer edges of our definition, that you think you would want to call out? Maybe.
It's a good question.
Think about it. Pat, you go next. We'll go back to Bo.
Sure. Oh man, I guess I got a little controversial one. See, I had a hard time between like thriller and slasher, especially like a violent thriller versus a slasher. But my number 5, kind of going through my list here, Disturbia / Rear Window.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, human bad guy, what, not supernatural or sci-fi. Definitely a body count in terms of who's next. Because, I mean, whether you have Shia LaBeouf or the guy, I don't even know who the other guy's name is, the guy from It's a Wonderful Life.
David Morse.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. Just I just remember being thoroughly entertained with it. Again, maybe that's kind of the Gina syndrome or whatever we're calling it, of like watching it in high school and just thinking that it's cool that you're watching a movie where a bunch of people are dying. But yeah, had a good time with it. Then the Simpsons episode that was based on it as well. So it kind of definitely lived on into the zeitgeist, if you want to call it that.
I think it's one of the better Hitchcock remakes, and even Hitchcock's like Rear Window is based on a short story, so like it's all like ties back to that short story, but I don't remember the name of that, but I thought it was fairly good, and I wonder if it'll still hold up. Have you watched it lately?
Disturbia or Rear Window?
Disturbia or Rear Window, I guess.
Rear Window I actually caught on TV a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, it still held up. I mean, it's a lot slower than the movie. That's the one thing I've noticed. There's like one channel that just airs like movies from the 40s and 50s and stuff all the time. They're just a lot slower than what they are today. But yeah, it was definitely, I mean, both of them are pretty short. I would say they're like an hour and a half, maybe 100 minutes or something. Not a whole lot of content to them, but entertaining.
This is when Shia LaBeouf was actually doing well in his career before the coked up YouTube video release.
Also, I would argue that his coked up YouTube video made his career.
Yeah. You're the only one who would argue that, I guess. Bo, you have your 5th? Okay.
Pass.
All right. Cool. Got it. All right. So I have a lot of movies that I think like would fit the bill in my top 5 favorite, because from time to time it changes for me. But recently, I mean 2 years ago or something, I watched Happy Death Day, and I thought from like latest movies that have been made on this like premise of like a bunch of teenagers or kids in high school or college getting murdered, I thought that it had a good take to it. It smashed up the whole Groundhog Day time loop genre with the Scream genre really well, and it was pretty funny. It had its moments, and in fact, I've been wanting to go back to the sequel and check it out a second time, because I think the movies are pretty funny, pretty good, and I think the sequel is better than the first one. And I want to show it to Magna too. So yeah, Happy Death Day is number 5 for me right now.
You liked the sequel? Because I liked the first movie too, but I hadn't seen the sequel.
I liked it. I thought that the sequel kind of built upon the things that worked, which like the lead to me in Happy Death Day was great. She like carried the movie for me. But also some of the humor, some of the I guess meta-ness too, because the sequel has that in there. I think those things made it a lot more fun in that sense.
Can we have repeat choices? Because we may be hearing that one again when it comes to my list.
Oh, damn. I like that Happy Death Day is showing up on the lists. That's good. I thought that would be a pretty unique one, but I guess not.
Happy Death Day was going to be on my list, but I was worried it had supernatural elements.
Only the second one.
Yeah, that's why I didn't say the second one. Yeah, I think the first one feels, if you take the time loop piece out of it, it's pretty like it's pretty slasher in that sense in my mind.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. So if you take the big, the
the whole plot
the
point.
part of the movie
Hey,
out.
I told you you can still make a case for whatever you want to say. So you're the
Right.
one who
I'm
passed.
bringing back a couple of movies
All
back
right.
to my list then.
All right, okay. I had a feeling that I would be the first one to break my own rules, so that's okay.
You know what happens when you break the rules, though, in a slasher movie?
Oh right, yeah, I'm the brown guy who's gonna die. Um, all right, this time let's go. Pat, you go first. What's fourth in your list?
Number 4, I have Hush. This one I found on Netflix. A lot of these slasher movies, actually, looking at my list, I just found randomly on Netflix. Usually I like to watch them by myself at night after Claire already has gone to bed. Hush, great movie. Definitely like a unique concept in terms of kind of a take on the slasher film. If you're not familiar, Hush is where it is a home invasion. So I guess I'm kind of
Yeah,
breaking Siraj's rules here. But it's the woman who's being invaded is deaf. So like the opening invasion scene, if you want to call it that, or whenever it takes place, 20 or 30 minutes into the film, like the guy's behind her trying to scare her and spook her, but she's not reacting because he doesn't know that she's deaf. And kind of to build off
yep.
what Gina was saying before, like I love these kind of combination slasher and comedy where like, yes, in the real world that wouldn't be a funny thing, but since I'm just watching a movie, that's pretty hilarious to me.
Yeah, and there's remember Pat, we saw a trailer for a movie that is coming out that is like instead of the girl being deaf, she's blind and she's like being guided by an app when a intruder breaks in.
No, when did we see this?
Oh, when we were watching Scream 5. It was in the trailers.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Oh,
I don't remember that trailer at all.
was it the shot that you had right at the beginning of the movie?
Possibly the peanut butter whiskey.
Pat, I was just gonna say I super love Hush. I had crossed it out on my list because it was Home Invasion, but it is such a good one, and I've definitely rewatched that several times on Netflix.
Yeah, it's one of those where like I don't even know if it had like a theatrical release or if it would just do better on a streaming service. But yeah, definitely kind of underrated. Kind of one of those. I don't even know again if it's like an indie film or not, but
Yeah,
good
it had
find.
done really well in a bunch of like festivals when it had come out, and that's where so Mike Flanagan got his start from Hush, and Mike Flanagan is the guy who's made Haunting on Hill House or the Haunted House, the Netflix show.
The
He's
Haunting
made
of Hill House, which is
yeah,
so amazing.
exactly. He's a great filmmaker and director. He's made that, and then he made the sequel of that one. He made Doctor Sleep. He made Midnight Mass recently. So I think he's a master storyteller when it comes to this horror genre in general. But yeah, it did get a theatrical release. It just didn't do that well in the theaters as much as it did, like as a cult following afterwards. It's a good movie. All right, Gina, what's your number 4?
All right, my number 4, I wrote down It Follows,
Mm,
um, which also slightly breaks the rules because it still is a little supernatural. Um,
yeah.
but for those of you guys who haven't watched it, it's a story in which basically there's a supernatural entity that stalks you if like it's supposed to be an allegory
S-
or a metaphor for like
STD.
STDs. Yes. But it is so unnerving and unsettling. And I actually ended up reading an article about like why it's so unsettling. And so they have all of these different elements where they have like weird technology. None of the
Hmm.
characters are actually dressing for a certain weather. So it gives you this really like displaced dreamlike quality that constantly unnerves the viewer. And it's
Hmm.
just so wonderfully made and very creepy.
I think like a big part of It Follows for me was just the cinematography of the
Yeah.
movie. Like if I remember, it's so well done that you remember like sequences vividly shot. So I remember the initial sequence of her running, that girl running, and then the camera just like turning around all the way around the street, like a 360 pan. I remember that old lady chasing her and while she's in college and things like that, because it's just, and even the chase, it's like it's a slow motion chase, but even so, it's just still so creepy because it's
Yeah.
well
No,
done.
it was very weird that it's like this really slow moving like killer, but it's so inevitable. I don't know. It's one of those movies that like I mean like unlike House of Wax, which I think like even though it's much more gory, it's much more fast paced. It's a lot easier to like brush off.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm sure someone will correct me on this one, but I think the director, like David Robert Mitchell, he would have recurring dreams of someone's following him, and that was like the I guess the idea, the germ behind the movie or the seed to the story, and that's like how he had started working on it, but it shows like he was working on it for years before actually making it because it's such a well written screenplay too.
I'm glad me and Gina are in agreement on a lot. I would even put It Follows in like my top 10 movies of any genre.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's strong.
Especially like I know Gina said it kind of like I forget the phrase, like it kind of falls off of you after watching it or something. Actually, I
Hmm.
would say It Follows stuck with me because I put
It
myself in
followed
there.
you.
It followed. Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess in the sense of like what I would do if I was in that scenario or whatever.
Situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I was
Yeah.
in that
So
situation, like, yes, one of the characters kind of does what I think that I would do, but I don't know if that would actually work or what. But
which character is that, Pat?
I mean, are we doing
The good one?
spoilers? Are we doing spoilers from a
I
movie
guess
from
not.
2014?
Yeah, I wouldn't spoil that one.
Sure. Hey, sponsors. It Follows. Film Stop 3 on Twitter if you want to sponsor
Well,
this episode.
I mean, if that was the case, then
Jesus.
literally every episode of ours would have like 10,000 sponsors. But yeah, I don't think people who've made It Follows are listening either. No, but if you haven't watched It Follows, then you should. It's actually a very, very well told thriller. I would call it a thriller horror, but yeah,
Oh,
good call. Go ahead, Bo.
guess I need to watch that.
And
Okay.
it's not a slasher. Let me just call it out. That's not a slasher in my mind. That's a horror,
It's a
Gina.
little bit of a slasher.
I
There's some there's some slasher elements. Okay. I will if you don't like that one, I have a one that we can slide in if we're willing to be okay with like magic or devil summoning.
No.
no.
You can't replace one
I
doesn't fit
know.
for another doesn't fit.
Yeah, that's.
Yes,
But
I can. You just have to pick which one is you're more willing to live with.
That's like, excuse me, officer. I know I was driving 60 in a 40, but could I go 55 instead?
yeah, we'll count it as a consideration from you, Gina. That's
Ouch.
pretty much it. I'm just kidding. It's all good. Bo, go with your four. All right. Do you have a four?
Well, since everyone's going off the rules, I'm gonna go off the rules as well. And
Yay.
and so this is definitely not a slash movie, but for whatever reason in my mind, it feels like a slash movie. So
Hmm.
it's all about that. That's what I'm gonna throw out there. And it's a horrible movie. Nobody should watch it, and it shouldn't have been made. But for whatever reason, in my mind, when I think slasher movies, I think of what was it called? The Deep Blue Sea.
Oh.
Like
Okay.
obviously a creature movie more than a horror movie or a slasher movie,
That's a
but
good take. That's a good
but
take on the threat.
it
Yeah.
feels like a slasher movie,
Yeah.
which for whatever reason, and and I have to choose it because the idea of a giant shark jumping out and biting Samuel L. Jackson in half is just
Right.
absolutely hilarious. So
Yeah. I like the idea of like, I'm sure the synopsis was pretty much Samuel L. Jackson cussing out a shark. That's it.
yeah, pretty much. Pretty.
So you would pick Deep Blue Sea over like Jaws or something like that?
I don't think I've ever seen Jaws like all the way through, and
What?
it doesn't. The other thing is like it doesn't feel as much like a slasher movie. Like it's I don't know why, right? Like there's definitely some intangibles there, but
I think you may be thinking about Deep Blue Sea as a slasher because it has like some comedic elements to it. It doesn't
it
take
could be.
itself that seriously, and maybe in that space. Yeah,
Yeah. There's definitely like Jaws or a lot of the other creature movies or like alien slasher movies, I guess you could say it. It's a little more serious, right? It has a different feel to it, right? But Deep Blue Sea feels like slasher.
Okay. It's still out of the boundaries, but since Gina got one and I got one, I guess you get one too. All right, so I'm gonna go to my number 4. It's one that is very like nostalgically sort of making itself into my top 5 list. I watched this one on a sleepover with some friends, and I don't know. It also introduced me to the genre, I guess, to some extent, because I hadn't watched Scream until after I watched I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is not really highly rated as a movie, but for some reason I remember it being like a huge hit at the time. I could be wrong about this, but I think it was, or at least I imagine it to be.
Oh
No,
yeah,
it
it
was
definitely
super
was a
big.
huge hit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a huge hit, and I can tell you exactly why.
Oh yeah? Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, Bo.
There's really 2 reasons. There's Sarah Michelle Gellar and Jennifer Love Hewitt, and that's the reason.
Maybe that's why I liked it too. I don't know, but it's one that I keep going back to in my, like, whenever I think of a slasher movie, I cannot not think of I Know What You Did Last Summer. And also, I think that the name is really nice too. For some reason, the name makes it even better for me. So that's my number 4. All right. Okay.
All right. I will also counter that Bo had 2 reasons for I Know What You Did Last Summer, but there are 2 other reasons, which is Ryan Felipe and Freddie Prinze Jr.
Well done.
Fair.
Fair enough. Yes. I like voicing the other side.
Yes. So I think overall it was bound to be a success.
When I think of all these guys, I just think 90s. They're like quintessential 90s for me, all 4 of them. And maybe like a few of them were in what is it? Cruel Intentions? Was it Cruel Intentions?
Just Ryan Felipe was Sarah?
Wasn't Sarah Sarah Michelle Gellar was.
Oh yeah. No, she totally was.
Yeah, and that's another movie that stands out as a 90s.
And your girl Nev Campbell.
Oh yeah, my favorite actress. All right, okay, Bo, what's your number 3?
Oh well, you just took it. It was I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Made up in.
No, it's one that I actually remember for various reasons. No, I mean it was a memorable one. Probably because of the cultural zeitgeist at the time. But yeah, no, it's a classic slasher. Like when you think slasher, it's one of the ones that pop up, right? So
Yeah, and I think that, like, I don't know. I watched Urban Legend after I watched I Know What You Did Last Summer. But when I think back to movies that introduced me to American culture in some ways, or even like teenage culture at the time, it was I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, and then a bunch of the American Pies. So yeah, it's all sort of meshed into that nostalgia factor.
No Final Destination for you?
Oh, yeah, sure, that too. But I think that is more, I would relate it more to like irrational fear of dying in my mind after watching those. So that's what those bring back.
I think fear of dying is pretty rational, but all right.
No, irrational, I guess things that are irrational. Okay. That.
I was
All
going
right.
to Suraj and say that, like, I feel like after Final Destination, you're just looking for those freak accidents. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just fearful of everything. Yeah.
You're like, wait, I did sleep in this morning. Maybe I missed a car crash, and now fate is chasing me.
It's more like I can't sleep underneath like a cabinet Like if there's a wall hanging cabinet or whatever, I can't sleep underneath it knowing that like I, for some reason in my mind like the thing goes to like, oh, what if whoever put those in like didn't do them right? What if it wasn't torqued enough and the thing collapses in the middle of the night on my face and I die? I sometimes even think about the ceiling fan that way. Okay, we're getting into
Ooh,
therapy.
the ceiling fan I agree with.
Yeah, so
All right, number 3. My number 3 is another one that I found just randomly on Netflix one day called Terrifier. Basically, whenever I say that movie to anybody, no one else has really heard of it.
That one I haven't gotten the courage to watch.
Oh,
Clowns
man.
creep me out too much.
Yes, it is. Again, slasher / horror / clowns. I don't know. The one thing that is just always going to stick with me. One of the victims dies. It's a female. I think she's in college, maybe high school or probably college. I think they're kind of older in this one. Tied up, upside down, kind of spread eagle, totally naked. And this guy takes just a handsaw and just goes straight cheek to head. And it's just, I just think that's hilarious because, I mean, I've mentioned it before. I'm a man of hardware and of, home improvement. There's no way your handsaw is going through skull and spine and all that stuff. So
that's what you took away.
I mean, if we're watching, none of these things are actually going to happen. So, like, I can remove myself. We can laugh at murders. We can laugh when people die. So, I don't know. But
I remember you pointing something about like the guy's roof in *Malignant* when we talked about.
Yeah, the giant attic fan that was in *Malignant*. It's like a 5-foot diameter attic fan. Nobody has that. There's no need for that unless you're just trying to spook somebody.
Yeah, I was gonna say Pat does make an interesting point. Is that like I think that's why I'm not probably as much into the slasher movies. Is that like, it's a dude with a knife. Oh, okay, like there's just better ways to kill someone. It's not really that scary.
Well, I don't even think that like it's so much about. I don't think that they need to convince me that like, oh, this person is like immortal or you cannot kill him or whatever. They just need to convince me that the people who I need to care for are also really stupid. So, or the flip side of that, like these really stupid people should be cared for. That's all they need to convince me for because most of them are stupid in the movies. So
yeah. I will also, it's not about efficiency of kills. It's about like spectacular. Like how spectacular is it?
Right, but I'm just saying like, if you put yourself in the situation, it's like, oh, okay. It's not like it's a ghost or something. It was like, well, I guess I don't know how to stop a ghost, but dude with a knife, that's not that difficult.
Oh, that said, like none of us have actually been in a situation where there's a dude with a knife who is a lot more, I guess, like powerful chasing us. Unless you have Bo and we don't know something about you.
That's something. Didn't that happen in Scream where somebody grabs a knife and somebody says, "Here's a better weapon" or something like that? Or was that in a different slasher movie?
I'm sure it has happened. Yeah, I'm sure it has happened at some point in Screams where they've kind of called out how they even called out how many times people get stabbed and they're okay afterwards.
Yeah, and that's pretty realistic too, to a certain extent. Like you can get stabbed a lot of times.
Fair enough.
Off subject.
Okay, moving on. Gina, what's number 3 for you?
Bo, how many times can you get stabbed?
A lot. It really depends on if you get stabbed somewhere important.
I suppose. All right. Number 3.
I'm sure my mom dropped off right after that discussion. But...
This comment. Yeah, I know. Actually, listening to this, I will now not be recommending my parents listen to this. They can just never know that I've ever been on a podcast. Okay, number 3 is a classic. It is Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Which I think is like one of the first slashers I probably saw. I feel like these were all like Nightmare on Elm Street, like Halloween, all those older ones like Friday the 13th were playing on some TV show, like some TV channel like in middle school for me. And I feel like somehow I got a hold of that and Just loved it.
But Nightmare also is one of those things where it's using like a specific element for storytelling, which is like dreams, and it actually
Yeah.
uses that pretty well through like elevating the scares. Like I don't think that because nightmares is such a common thing for everyone. I think they really play well on like that space between what's unreal and real. Unlike say Halloween or like to Bo's point, every other movie is about like some guy with a knife chasing you. I think Nightmare on Elm Street actually takes it into this space where it can feel real because we all have nightmares. So
No,
I think
I
this is
totally
where I
agree.
have to jump in. I've never seen any of the three like most famous slasher ones. When we talk about Halloween or Freddy
Friday
Krueger
the 13th?
or Jason, yeah, I've never
really,
seen any of
Oh,
those movies.
that will have to change.
wow.
Yeah, I mean, I've only
I'm
seen one of them.
I'm
So
very like anti '80s, if that's a thing. I don't know. It's something about the way that movies were shot back then
Well,
that just like I don't know if
Halloween
it's like
and
the ratio or like the just resolution of it. I just can't. I just can't do it.
Halloween is 70s. I think that Friday the 13th is also 70s. I think Nightmare was 80s.
Nightmare is 80s. I think it was 84.
Yeah. But you should definitely watch it since you like horror and you like the slasher genre too, Pat. It's worth checking that out.
If you don't like the filming, I would say that like Nightmare is a little bit easier to swallow just because it is a lot of it, like Siraj was saying, is about the dream and it kind of like plays on your nightmares a lot more. So it doesn't have to, the filming and like the cinematography doesn't have to be so like crisp and like feel real just because a lot of the whole movie is about not feeling real.
Yeah, and I
Sure.
guess the point that I was also trying to make that I didn't was that I think Nightmare on Elm Street actually does the slasher in a different way, and it feels good. Like it's a different take on this space, similar to Happy Death Day, which is just it's a spin on the usual, which is like a bad guy just killing people. There's a spin to it, which is in the Nightmare. So, anyways, all right. So for me, number three is Halloween, and the original, because I think when I think of like slasher movie greats, as in filmmakers, I think back to like Wes Craven and John Carpenter and Alfred Hitchcock, and so in that sense, I think Halloween changed so much for the genre, and in the same like decade, this is a few years ago when I was like trying to go back and watch a bunch of these slasher flicks and things like that. I watched also Black Christmas, which was from the same decade, and Halloween takes like a lot from Black Christmas. And if I would have replaced Halloween with anything, I would say Black Christmas. But it's just Halloween's music and it's just filmmaking, the cinematography, everything was just so avant-garde for that time, that it has to show up. And I think the next two in my list would also kind of connect back to that. But yeah, Halloween's number three for me. Um, I'm going to continue. I'm going to say my number two. My number two is Peeping Tom. It's a 60s movie. It was made by Michael Powell. It is, it's, I think, one of the first movies to actually take on this perspective of a serial killer. And it didn't move well in the theaters at the time. It was too voyeuristic. It was too, even though, people had watched a bunch of Hitchcock movies. So you can imagine um, how different it was for the time, because it actually took that entire like dark mental space of a madman and portrayed it really well. I think it's one of those movies that I would like to see a remake for, because it can fit really well into the current climate with our phones and social media and everything, because it's about this guy who like captures the women that he's gonna murder, but like he captures them um with like, I don't want to give up too much in the movie, but basically he's one who's like recording everything that he does when he murders them. And I think with the given like social media climate, like I said, TikToks and the Instagrams and the Facebooks of the world, I think they could be a cool little spin-off or remake of that. But anyways, I would say Peeping Tom is my number two. Bo, what's your number two?
So my number two is Scream, the original.
Mm.
Uh, it in a lot of ways, I think it kind of redefined it kind of largely created, I think, the 90s slash early 2000s horror genre, where it was kind of
Yep.
a horror comedy type thing. Uh, so I really enjoyed that, and yeah, no, I thought it was a very influential film, and it kind of revived the whole horror genre to a certain extent as well.
Yeah, that's true. It actually did revive, and it revived not just like the horror genre, but also thrillers in general. So that's a good call. Safe call. Gina, what about you? What's your number two?
I'm gonna do one and two because Scream is my number one,
Oh,
which I also love. I think it was one of the first movies that I saw that was a slasher, along with like Nightmare, but it was a horror comedy, which I didn't realize was a genre until I saw it. And then after
mm,
that, I just absolutely loved kind of that almost like cheeky tone
yeah.
for a horror movie, which is just very hilarious to me. But number two is actually something I mentioned earlier, which was Fear Street. And
Mm,
I put down 1994 because I think it's the most straight slasher movie, but it's a trilogy that goes
mhm.
backwards in years. But my actual favorite of those three is the second one, which is 1978, which is like a little bit of a rip off of Friday the 13th. I just like it better. I think they did it better.
Yeah, I gotta get to the Fear Street series, but Scream number one, good call. I do you ever feel like, and you mentioned Scream 3 was one that you like too, right? So like, do you ever think about that being better than Scream 1?
I think I liked Scream 2, but no, I think Scream 1 was always, it still is my favorite. And even like watching, I know I mentioned how Fear Street 1994, actually, like the opening scene is
Yeah.
almost beat for beat very similar to the opening of Scream, which is Drew Barrymore.
Yeah.
And it made me want to rewatch it. And I like how both of them did it. Like, obviously, Scream and the original did it perfectly. It's like its own little mini movie. And then Fear Street paying like homage, but still like doing it its own way, I think made it special. I think both of them hit the right tones and what they wanted to with that movie, with each of their respective movies, I mean.
Yeah, and just kind of, well, I don't know, to kind of piggyback off that point, like, what I was saying earlier about, like, well, I don't really remember a whole lot of slasher movies. Like, I think I've seen a decent number of them, but I just don't remember them because in my mind it's like, oh, okay, that was kind of like Scream, and
Mhm.
that so my mind just kind of blurs it out.
Yeah, I think that like Scream is one that I love for what it did, but I don't know if I can go back to it. Like I can't keep going back to Scream and rewatching it. I don't know if you guys can, but that's why it didn't show up in my top five, I guess.
Really? I
Yeah.
can, it's a movie I can go back to. Like a
Mm.
lot of these are ones I will rewatch.
Wow.
Actually, all of these are ones I would rewatch or have rewatched.
Yeah, and all of the five that I have in my list, I would rewatch. But yeah, okay, all right. Well, Pat, what's your number two?
Sure. To kind of go along with the trend, I'm going to do my number two and number one.
All right. Well, I don't think Bo did it, but you
Messed
can do
it.
your one because then Bo can do his one.
Sure.
Nope, Gina starts the trends.
Yeah.
Yep. Number two was Happy Death Day that I mentioned before.
Yep.
And then my number one, maybe it is kind of a recency bias, maybe not, but The Babysitter, both number one and number two.
Oh, good
Oh
Again,
my God.
call.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
just
such a
something I
good
found
one.
on something I found on Netflix one day. Definitely number one over number two. I would say the sequel kind of had the same issues that the sequel had for Happy Death Day, where they just tried to take it too far.
Yeah.
But really, really enjoyed The Babysitter, the first one. Definitely built kind of on that nostalgia, kind of an 80s, 90s vibe to it. But yeah, it was.
That is so funny you said that. The babysitter was gonna be my sub out since you guys did not like It Follows.
Did you guys watch Better Watch Out? It was the
Oh,
Christmas.
yes.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite ones that I found as well. That was really well done, I thought.
Yeah,
Which
I was
one is
shocked
it?
how good it
Better
was.
watch out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's a
like a
Christmas horror.
yeah, it's a Christmas. It is a sort of like a. I wouldn't put it into a horror space. I would call it more of a thriller. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's similar to the babysitter sort of
Yeah,
space. I'll
Christmas
say.
violence.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I would say I
that's
am a little bit on a
actually
kick of some Christmas violence movies lately, but
Have you watched Krampus? I'm sure you have.
no, I
Oh
haven't gotten
wow.
around to that. The latest
I
one.
haven't watched it either.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys should watch it. It's good, especially like the horror comedy space. Like it does that really well. Christmas horror comedy. So highly recommend that. Bo, what's your number one?
Halloween,
Oh, all right.
classic, and just so crisp and clean and contained in what it is. Um, yeah, I think it was one of the first movies that I watched like with a kind of a that kind of critical eye, if that makes sense. Of like
Hmm.
thinking about how it was put together in a certain sense.
Do you have you gone back to it again and again, or is it just the one
No,
time?
no, I only watched it once, but it still left quite an impression. So,
Oh yeah, it
um,
it, it, it holds up, and I think the last time I watched it was probably I want to say like 3 4 years ago. But yeah, it's still such a good movie, and I think like you brought this up earlier, right? Like why should I care for a bunch of people who like you shouldn't be killed by a knife or whatever. You should be able to avoid that. Um, but I think it does like the
I don't
opposite
know
of
if
that
I quite
actually
put it
really
that way,
well.
but
Well, yeah, it was
yeah,
better put than what I did, but I think it's a good example of why that doesn't really matter because if a
yeah,
movie is
yeah.
well told, then it's well told.
Exactly right. Like Halloween is just it so perfectly did the suspense and all that in just really clean filmmaking, right? Like I like well, I mean, I like Carpenter in general,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, that one and it wasn't a long movie either, right? It got right to the point, so to speak, and didn't mess around with a whole lot of fluff. So
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that all of our movies, I think, there is this like consistency of the best ones have a good like combination of some form of characters that are actually that you can care a little bit for. The music is really good. The soundtrack is really good. The cinematography is really good. The editing is fairly crisp. Like those things make a good slasher movie, in my mind, at least. Um, all right, so my number one might sound like a little bit of a easy cop out answer, but it's Psycho. I think when I think of slasher movies, I think of Psycho immediately because to me, um, it pretty much gave birth to this genre. And I think I mentioned Alfred Hitchcock at the beginning, but I'm a huge Hitchcock fan, and I think that he is pretty much the father of anything thriller, in my mind, at least, as it pertains to cinema. So, Psycho specifically, again, yeah, the writing, the editing, the cinematography, the iconic music, the iconic shots, everything about that movie is worth rewatching and just sort of like textbook of cinema, just sort of understanding and re-understanding and relearning because it will give you new things again and again. So yeah, it has to be Psycho for me. On that note, I guess we have ended our top fives. Do you guys have any last minute mentions? Any that we didn't cover that you really care for?
Yeah. So we got time for honorable mentions.
Yeah,
You can do that. Yeah, you can do some honorable.
All right, I'll go
go for
real
it,
quick.
Pat.
Don't Breathe. Another kind of similar one
Oh,
to Hush.
yeah,
American
Also on
Psycho.
mine.
yeah, but that's a very home invasion. I
American
wouldn't call that a
Psycho,
slasher.
interesting.
Yeah, American Psycho. The Strangers. Again, home invasion.
Yeah,
Final Destination. We mentioned.
yeah.
One it's been on my list forever, and I finally got around to it the other day. Called You're Next.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Oh,
cheap movie. Acting is terrible, but story eventually picks up towards the middle of it. And Saw. Are any of the Saw movies? Are we calling those slashers?
I was thinking
Are
about
those
it. What?
yeah. No, I'm thinking if Saw's a slasher.
I I think it's yeah, I think you can call it that. Yeah, sure. But I in my mind when I was like going through it and I thought of Saw, I didn't think of it in the same mold, so I didn't count it. But yeah, Saw 1 is one of my favorite thrillers ever. So, good call.
And then I got two that are so bad that they're good: Sleepaway Camp and Chopping Mall.
Sleepaway Camp is great. What are you talking about?
Uh, and then Chopping Mall, but then it's like robots. So
Hey,
yes,
have
it
you
is
watched Ready or Not? That's a movie. I know, Bo, you and I watched it. It was this newlywed like
Oh
she
yeah,
got
yeah.
yeah
That one is great,
Yes,
actually.
that is
it
awesome.
is it is
that was a fun one.
and I
Why
think
did I
it
It was a
thought that
little
was
dumb.
called Hide and Seek? Maybe
Hide and Seek is that what's his face Anthony Hopkins movie. That's like the split personality child or what have you. I don't remember.
Oh, yeah. You're right. No, Ready
What?
or Not is a great one though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it came out like the same time as another one of those like world's most dangerous type, where it's like hunting humans type thing.
Hunt. You mean
The
like
Hunt.
Yeah, The Hunt was another one that came out.
Yeah, so I got those two movies mixed up in my head for the longest time because even the main characters look very similar.
Yeah, they do. I
And then
call
I found
her. I call the actress in Ready or Not like great value Margot Robbie because she looks very much like her.
I watched it
Isn't
on
she's
an
in
airplane. I
Babysitter,
thought it was
right?
Margot Robbie the whole time.
Really?
Wait, what? What did you say, Gina?
I was gonna say that's isn't she in yeah, she is. She is the babysitter.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh,
she
that's
is.
funny.
You're right. You're right. I forget. She's also in
Discount.
Guns Akimbo.
I was just gonna say she's in the greatest action movie featuring a Harry Potter character.
Oh, you said that.
Wait, I need to watch Guns Akimbo. Man.
Wait, do you
Wait, how are
recommend
you
it?
gonna say that? How are you gonna say that Guns Akimbo is better than Die Hard? Come on, come
No,
on.
with Harry Potter. Harry Potter in it. Harry Potter's not in Die Hard. Not as
Well,
far
Oh.
a
as I
Harry
know.
Potter character,
Yeah, I said
but
Harry Potter character.
Snape,
I guess.
yeah, Snape is
Oh.
definitely in Die Hard. Come on.
Yeah, I heard Harry Potter, not Harry Potter character. Okay, well, yeah, sure. Die Hard is better. I also
mean-
think Edge of Tomorrow that way is because Moody is in Edge of Tomorrow. He's a
Is
general.
he?
Yeah,
Edge of Tomorrow is a
Gleason.
great movie.
yeah, it's a
I
great
need to
movie.
see that. It's
I'm
been
sorry.
on my
Do
list
any
forever.
of these movies feature a man's hands nail gun to a couple of pistols? Because I don't think that they are.
I guess that's a fair point.
No, they do not.
That would be horrible for your ability to actually do any kind of precise shooting. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Bo. I know there was a reason why we have you on this podcast.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got me for attic fans, and you have Bo for shooting accuracy.
Yeah, and Gina for horror, which is great. All right, I like this team that we're putting together.
What is it? Okay, my honorable mentions. Don't Breathe was definitely on there. Okay, I know. Actually, I was rethinking about it, and I think Tucker and Dale versus Evil
Yes, I thought.
actually isn't a
Oh,
slasher at all because
Yeah.
I think they all just accidentally die.
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay,
which is so great.
And it's the
No, that's a
bad
good-
guys that are dying, not the good guys.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, great horror comedy, still good. And then this was on Netflix and is also a random Netflix find. I do not know if it's on there now, but it is Housebound, which is like a New Zealand like thriller.
Yeah,
It's about
I've
a lady
heard of
on
it.
house arrest, and like is haunted / people die.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it, and I've seen like the previews, but I have not watched it. You recommend
Yeah.
it?
I recommend it. It's very funny. It's like I don't know. I have not seen very many New Zealand movies, but they have like a very dry humor. It's
Oh
funny.
yeah, Taika Waititi is like obviously from there, but he's made. I'm sure you've watched What We Do in the Shadows, which is great.
I have, you know what? I have not because it's not on any streaming services, but I have watched it via
Ugh.
YouTube clips.
Oh my god,
It was on Amazon Prime for a while.
I thought so
Was
too.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The show is.
No, the
Oh.
movie. That's where I saw it a few years
Ugh,
back.
now I'm just upset.
I would highly recommend it. You should watch it for sure.
Yeah, it's worth watching.
I also like Freaky. We watched that
Yeah,
last
Freaky.
year.
I don't think it's really that much of a slasher, though, right?
Yeah,
That's yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's a parody of slashers in a way.
Is that the body switch one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good though?
yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
I
good.
actually rather enjoyed it. Strangely enough.
Yeah. I watched. I mean, when we talk about like horror thrillers or sorry, comedy thrillers or the space. Have you guys watched Voices? It was like Ryan Reynolds. He's a serial killer. Um, there is, I think it was Anna Kendrick was in it too, but it was basically him being this really nice guy on to the world, but has like a refrigerator full of heads of women in it, and it's a very normalized thing for him to just bring women over and kill, and he kind of sort of falls in love.
This
So
sounds
it's
like a Ryan Reynolds movie.
yeah,
Yeah, never heard of this one.
it's a good
No,
watch.
that sounds funny though. All
It's
right,
a really good watch.
honorable mentions. Like I said, I'm less into slashers and more into like I don't know other adjacent genres. Like I guess like you're more like creature horror movies.
Mhm.
So for me, it's so I'll mention three that aren't like Deep Blue Sea. They don't feel quite as much slashery, but they still have some elements that are in common. So Alien, Predator, and John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh,
Those
Thing. Yeah,
it's
that's a good
that one's
one.
such a good movie, but not quite a slasher.
Yeah.
So
I
so
feel like Alien kind of fits. Alien fits the genre more for me.
yeah, I think all three of them have elements, right? Because
Yeah.
they're very much like something's out there killing people, and it's very much a who dies next. But they're not quite there. I think I don't know.
Yeah. Well, hey, this was fun. I liked chatting about your guys' top fives. I thought it was pretty cool to get some insight into what you guys like and how you think about slashers. So, thank you for being here. And I guess I don't have any other parting thoughts besides honorable mentions. Do you guys have any other parting thoughts?
No, I just think we need to have some more viewing parties.
Yes, that is true.
True.
We should watch X together, all of us. We'll figure that out.
Yeah, that sounds good.
In times like these, when we're all cooped up inside, nothing better than watching a movie where a bunch of people die.
Makes you appreciate things.
I think so. I'm not sure if we appreciate a lot of things, but
It makes you appreciate that you're safe and sound in your like couch, sipping on some, I don't know, whatever, White Claws, red wine, whatever.
I guess
And if
so.
a guy comes at you with a knife, just grab a baseball bat.
Or just call Bo and say, what do I do?
Yeah, I think I would just call Bo.
I mean, bat beats knife any day for me. This is true.
Okay. Thanks for joining, guys. I know we had a few technical difficulties, but I thought it was pretty smooth. So thanks for being here. Thanks for spending your Sunday evening with us. I hope you guys liked it.
Thanks, Raj.
I'll see you guys soon. And guys, please like, share, subscribe wherever you're getting this. You can email us at Bo. What's your email?
I don't care about your opinions.
Right.
At gmail.com.
Thank you for that. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye.